Charles, do you have many like-minded close friends? It doesn't seem like you have many like you around. I have a huge diversity of people. Half the people I talk to think I'm cray-cray. Peanut butter and a cray-cray with a baseball bat. That's okay. If you have a superpower, what would it be? Oh, I think telepathy. All the shit that Charles Xavier can do. That's the way to go. From Joe, if you ever need roofing services, Horn Brothers Roofing, local out in Denver, Colorado. Well, Joe, here's some free advertising for Horn Brothers Roofing out in local Colorado. Charles, from Dr. Michael Lesser, quadruple board certified physician, one of the smartest doctors in the United States. Charles, your thoughts on using Rhabdomyosin in your new health clinic as a regular treatment to fight against anti-aging? Well, Michael, actually, it's a very interesting question. So there's a scientist out of Harvard named David Sinclair. He's wrote a lovely book called Lifespan. And there's a litany of other researchers that are looking into these things. And there's a lot of great anti-aging literature. And there are drugs like, as you're aware, metformin and rhabdomyosin and others where they've been having discussions about using these in some way to extend life. And what they've discovered is that there's very strong evidence, especially with metformin, and there's some placebo-controlled double-blind studies that are coming out to reveal just how efficacious this is, that these drugs may indeed actually slow down the aging process, like caloric-restricted diets and other stressors have been shown to do. And they translate to years of extension of life, not just weeks and months. Now, it's important to understand and manage expectations that you achieve, as you're aware, for the audience's benefit, extension of life as a series of escalations with the big brush strokes and then the fine details. So it's kind of like when Bob Ross paints something. He'll do the mountains or the big landscape, the large objects. Then he moves to the other brushes and he starts making the trees. So when you look at rhabdomyosin and metformin, NAD, high bioavailable resveratrol, other things, these are the brush strokes, the tiny brush strokes. The big brush strokes are free and simple, but hard. That's diet and exercise. You can always work out, and you don't even have to pay any money to do it. You don't even have to buy anything. There's plenty of ways to work out for free or very cheap. And diet, you can always converge to a maintainable diet that is interesting. Okay, so if you don't do those things, work out and have a good diet, no amount of rhabdomyosin or metformin or any of these other things is going to give you a beautiful picture. You're painting little trees, but you got no mountains, you got no water, you got none of that stuff. You need to get your mountains, your water, and your primary part of your palate done first. And then once you get that, then you can move on to the next stuff. So if you just do the diet and exercise, maybe you go from living to 75 and the last 10 years aren't so good to living to 85 and in the last year shit, but the rest of them are pretty good. Then you add the metformin and the rhabdomyosin, the NAD, these things, some intermittent fasting and other ideas, and you go from 85 to maybe you get to 90. That's good. Years are good. I'm a billionaire. I can't go to Walmart and go buy 5 years off the rack. There's no place I can go where I can just inject myself with something and magically I get a few more years. So that's magic. That's a very good thing. Then the next step is saying, okay, are there more accoutrements? Are there more things we can add? One thing we're looking at very intensively is hyperbaric therapies. That's as close to magic as you can get. They heal wounds really fast. They treat bends. There's actually a whole fellowship in hyperbaric medicine you can do. Actually, the entry point for that is taught in Florida and Miami. My dad and brother just went to a program down there, and they're going to do a year fellowship for it. But actually, more importantly for this conversation, hyperbaric chambers, there's some good clinical evidence that's been generated out of Israel, and it's being commercialized that's showing that they can actually slow down aging in situ. In addition to that, they have tremendously beneficial effects on nerves. TBI treatment, neurogenesis, they can trigger the production of BDNF. and a litany of other things. And there's just so many case studies. And every neurologist will tell you who's used hyperbaric medicine anecdotally and observationally. And now the science is finally starting to catch up and demonstrate it. Say, hey, actually, I've been using this for 10 years and it's really doing something good. You know, it's really helping out my patients who have neurological problems. Well, if it's good for that, it's good for the goose, good for the gander. So we're looking at these types of treatments in parallel, in addition to a collection of drugs, prescription and otherwise, that could take you from that 85 beyond. Then there's blue horizons, new horizons of anti-aging research for my biotech company. And there, that's beyond 5 years. It's beyond 7 years. It's more like the 10-year range. And you're starting to ask questions about as fetal stem cells. You know, you're asking questions about adult-derived stem cells, umbilical cord tissues, exosomes, these types of things. And you're looking at some form of a tissue transplant situation, either self-derived or external. And you're now playing with much more complicated primitives. Everything before is a modification of some process, metabolism, or some sort of process of the body's healing to regenerate it or get it to a state where it's operating optimally. But that's the tools God gave you. When you start talking about external things, it's very exciting because you potentially get another palette to play with. And that can make things great. You can put them together, whole new lifespan. But it's also quite dangerous because the same things that, as you're aware, could potentially be useful for regenerative medicine also start looking a lot like the cancers that kill us. And they start looking a lot like things that could create potentially autoimmune disorders and so forth. So the FDA in particular has been a little aggressive with people who have been involved in stem cell therapies, which is why a lot of treatments have offshored to Cancun, to Caribbean, and other places. And their adherents swear by them. And usually it's athletes or other people who have injuries, like, oh, the disc in my back is bad, or my shoulder is bad, or something like that. But in general, we just don't have quite yet the peer-reviewed, placebo-controlled, double-blind studies in clinical trials necessary to indicate an efficacious signal that, yes, this indeed is doing something to turn back the clock. However, it is my belief, because synthetic biology is getting better, bioinformatics is getting better, diagnostics are getting better, genomic medicine is becoming extremely refined, that we will, within a 10-year time horizon, finally be able to start exploiting a lot of these stem cell therapies, especially with adult stem cells, which are just phenomenal because you can harvest them from the patient. You don't have to do anything with embryos and aborted fetuses or any of these other stuff from the long ago. You can just make it from your person, and it's like and like. Your chance of a side effect when it's your cell, probably pretty low. And that feels like long-term a better solution for a whole bunch of reasons, from scalability of treatments to a risk of complications and side effects. You know, as all physicians aspire to do no harm, it's not good enough to have a potential to help. If you have a belief that there's a potential to harm, there's bad ethics in the rollout of that therapy. So we're looking into all of these things. You know, first things first is just get primary care to catch up to where it should be. Genomic medicine, fully sequence the entire genome, understand the epigenome really well, and why it works the way it does. The microbiome and all of the other synergistic processes that enable health, super important to get those straight. Diet, exercise, and overall wellness, super important to get that straight as well. I'm not exactly a model of health, as you're aware, and I need to improve there. And those are the big brush strokes. And then you put a care team together, and the Hoskinson clinic that we're setting up in Gillette is going to represent most of the specialties. There'll be a cardiologist and a neurologist and a rheumatologist and a GI doctor and primary care representation, along with support staff like a full-time geneticist to do genomic medicine and so forth. Get that done right, come up with a wellness plan, then you layer on top of that an anti-aging protocol that's bespoke to that patient, and then you track and modify things, you study things, and you're very metric-driven. We live in an age of diagnostic wonder. We have real-time continuous glucose monitors. You put them right here on the arm, and you can actually real-time track your blood sugar. and you just eat something and you can see how it spikes. And you say, well, carrots do this crazy thing, and and beets don't, or vice versa, and because everybody's metabolism is a little bit different. And then you can get to the level of saying, well, maybe there's a genetic reason for this, and if you fully sequence the genome, you can play mix and match. The other thing is AI-assisted medicine and peer chart review. As you're aware, many physicians deal with a belief that peer review is adversarial. Usually another doctor looks at your charts when you've screwed up, or there's a perception you screwed up, and there's an investigation, a medical board is involved. What if you build your practice in such a way where that's just the standard operating procedure? Suddenly the other physicians are there to help you, and they're not there to like take your license away or benefit a lawyer or something in a lawsuit or these issues. And AI review is very important because medicine is just simply too complicated now. You can't keep it all in your head. And so as a result, you need constant vigilance in every area, from the images that are taken to the drugs the patient's on, to try to keep up to date with standard of care, and also assist the construction of differential diagnoses. The other thing we're doing is building a full image center. We'll have a 3 Tesla MRI, 256 slice CAT scan, DEXA scan, full body ultrasound, and there's a lot of amazing advancements in medical imaging that are just starting to percolate into the marketplace. And with AI-assisted medical imaging, you can do some pretty remarkable things. And so that wellness plan, you can put all those things together. You're going to have the care team represented by a multi-specialty practice. You're going to have the genomic medicine. You have the image centers. You can do whole body MRI on the patient on a regular basis. You can take extensive labs because there's going to be a CLIA-approved lab there too. And there's a lot of really amazing labs, especially the onco labs in particular, a company called Grail and others that are developing tests that can do very early detection of cancer from a blood test that you just order as a physician. And most doctors aren't even aware that these tests exist because they're so new. And unless you're an oncologist and this is just your thing, you don't know about it. But early detection of these things is tremendously beneficial. Those are the broad brushstrokes for wellness, along with diet and exercise. Then next stage is the fine details. And then at some point you get the right to make another canvas once you've figured out how to do that in a responsible way that doesn't provide harm. So it's a side pursuit of mine, but my dad and brother work on it. They're both doctors, and we have other great people working on it, and we're real passionate about it. And I'll talk more about the biotech company over time. We're in kind of construction mode, building a big clinic and all these things, and it's tens of millions of dollars, but it's money very well spent. The other side of it is we'd like to have a humanitarian component. So it's not just medicine for the rich. The clinic that we're building is going to provide free health care for the poor. So we got to figure out the economics of that and how to balance them together, because you have to give back.